Hello, I think we're live, and welcome to the TARGETjobs Virtual National Pupillage Fair. Oh, no. Hello, and welcome to the TARGETjobs Virtual National Pupillage Fair. My name's Matt. I'm one of the editors on TARGETjobs Law and the TARGETjobs Law Pupillages Handbook. We are having the fair a little bit differently this year, coming to you from various home offices and kitchens and living rooms from across the country. I just want to, you should get a copy of the TARGETjobs Pupillages Handbook if it's been posted to you, if you signed up to the fair. We will take questions at the end, so please do keep them coming. Please do click the like button on any questions that you want answered so that we can shift them to the top of the list and put them to Mason at the end. I want to welcome back to the Pupillage Fair, Mason Bloom, who has been a very long-term veteran of the Talks programme. He is here to talk to you about financing your bar studies and how to handle your finances when you become a pupil barrister. So I'm going to hand over to Mason and let him take it away.
Morning. Thank you, Matt, for your kind introduction. Morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name's Mason Bloom. I'm a partner at Levene Chartered Certified Accountants, based not too far from Lincoln's Inn in the West End of London. We currently act for over 2,000 members of the bar, from junior barristers to QCs, and I jointly head up the specialist barristers unit at the practice. The presentation today will cover two key aspects of what you need to know. One is on financing your studies to take you through to the point where you become a barrister, and the second part of the presentation will focus on the key issues you need to be aware of when you do start trading as a barrister, and hopefully I'll give you some pointers to actually save you some money as well. So, financing your career at the bar, I'm sure you are all fully aware that training as a barrister is an extremely expensive and high risk undertaking. You're already incurring costs for your training courses for your undergraduate degrees and your living expenses, and then on top of that you will have the course fees for the new bar courses that have replaced the BPTC, and living expenses associated with that. You could also have the law conversion course fees as well. The good news at the moment is that the new bar course fees are generally slightly lower than the old BPTC system, and some courses have an option to actually divide the courses into two elements. So you actually pay for part one of the course, which is a much lower cost than part two. So if you unfortunately fail part one, then you're not committed to have to pay the much higher fees for the second part of the course. For example, the ICCA, the total cost of their bar course is just under £13,500, of which part one is about £1,600 and part two just under 12,000. The GDL can cost up to £12,000 and if you're studying that full time in London. So course fees are expensive. You've got your living expenses as well. There are a combination of funding sources available to you. Those funding sources include scholarships or bursaries from the 4 Inns of Court. You may have savings that you can contribute yourself. Hopefully some of you will have support from your families with those course fees and living expenses. A number of the bar course providers do have scholarships for their course fees. There are professional and career development loans that you can obtain. If you secure a pupillage, you can take a drawdown of a pupillage award prior to when you actually start pupillage. So you could use some of that pupillage drawdown to pay for course fees and living expenses. And there are a few charities and local authority awards, but they are rare. There's a few other things. The Bar Council have an annual law reform essay competition, and the prize money for that totals £10,000. So moving on to the actual sources of finance. All of this information is publicly available, so if you want to do your own research afterwards, it is easily available on the internet to find out a bit more. Effectively, the scholarships from the four inns, Lincoln's Inn, Inner Temple, Middle Temple and Gray's Inn, they total approximately £5 million a year, and they would cover the cost of any conversion course, bar course and some of the pupillage. And some of the scholarships also include a grant for subsidised housing arrangements as well. So in terms of the applying for a scholarship for the bar course, you can only make one application to one inn. So you need to do your research, you need to pick the right one, you need to focus on the inn that gives you the best chances of success. You do not have to be a member of the inn to apply, but you must become a member to receive the funding. All of the inns are going to be looking for your intellectual ability, evidence of your excellence in performance at university, evidence of your legal research skills, motivation of your serious commitment to succeed at the bar, and your potential as an advocate, your oral skills, skills in mooting, debating, and mock trials. They'll also look at your personal qualities, your personality, presentation, and integrity. And the key bit is they'll also look at your financial circumstances. All of the scholarships are means tested. So Lincoln's Inn, they have funding available at about 1.7 million. That is concentrated on scholarships and bursaries. About 1.5 million is available for the bar course, and a much smaller amount for the GDL, 170,000. The scholarships, they're split into about approximately 100 scholarships for the bar course year, ranging between £6,000 and £20,000 each. There's no set amount, as I've mentioned, they're based on personal needs. The size of the individual award is unlikely to cover the full costs of the GDL or the bar course, so annual living expenses. Lincoln's Inn, they do offer scholarships for and bursaries for candidates, accommodation awards in the inn as well. You need to be aware when you apply that Lincoln's Inn, it's a written application, and then if you're successful with that, they invite you to a panel interview. No awards are made without an interview first, and the closing dates for the application are towards the beginning of November in the year prior to commencing the bar course. And then the GDL, the closing date is the beginning of May prior to commencing that course. You've got to make sure your references arrive on time along with the application, and the results for the scholarships come out for the bar course in July and August for the GDL. Inner Temple, their funding that is available has increased to just under 1.9 million, of which 1.7 million is for bar course awards. Inner Temple is the inn with the largest awards budget. Scholarships vary, and the number of bar course awards each year is not fixed, but approximately it's about 100 a year. The largest award is 22,000, and there's about 200,000 available for the GDL year. Inner Temple, the only inn to guarantee if you receive a GDL scholarship, you can also have an award at least equal value for the bar course as well without further interview. Middle Temple funding is approximately 1.3 million, of which 1.1 million for the bar course, and the application process is the same as the other inns, and they interview all applicants as well. And Gray's Inn, approximate funding available is 1.3 million. Bar course awards up. So Gray's Inn have actually got the largest scholarship. So their awards are up to 30,000, with the average award being just under £20,000. They also offer residential scholarships up to £9,500 as well. In terms of other sources of funding, there is the student loan company postgraduate funding. This is only available for master's courses. So if you choose a bar course that is combined with a master's qualification, then you can apply for that postgraduate funding. The maximum funding available is just under £11,000, and that can be used for course fees and living expenses. There are the graduate, you can apply for graduate bank loans from high street banks, and those loans range from £1,000 to £15,000, and they are subject to a suitability assessment, and they carry commercial levels of interest repayments on top of the loan repayments as well. There is a private student loan provider in the UK. They are called Future Finance Loans, and their loans range from £2,000 to £40,000, and that covers both the tuition and living costs. You need to apply for these loans 6 months before starting your postgraduate course. As I mentioned previously, the law schools do offer a limited number of awards and bursaries, and they're offered to students with exceptional abilities and to support students who cannot otherwise afford the course fees. And there are a number of charities and grant-making trusts that do offer financial support, and you should contact your local education authority award officer who can provide information on available grants, loans and other funds. I also mentioned that if you do secure a pupillage, you may be able to take an advance, a drawdown of part of your pupillage award to assist while you study your bar course. So I do have a number of clients that the awards that they receive from their chambers are not insignificant amounts, so they can use part of that advance of that drawdown to fund their studies. It just depends on the level of your pupillage award and how that's structured, but you should be aware that if you do take a drawdown of part of that pupillage award, some of that can subsequently be deemed to be taxable income, but I'll come back to explain a bit more about that shortly. So I think the key thing to take from here is that you really need to be realistic about your own skills and potential. It is a fiercely competitive market. I believe 1/3 of students taking the bar courses eventually obtain a pupillage. So it can be an expensive, high-risk project. But from personal experience, I've seen that the rewards can be great for those that succeed. So, so hopefully that should give you just a clear direction on that there are a number of different sources of finance to actually fund the remaining part of your studies to take you to the point where you actually start as a self-employed barrister. So I'm just looking at the time on my clock, how much time I've got left. Okay, so I'm going to take you on a journey in an imaginary time machine. So rather than us all of us stuck in our sort of own homes or at university residential where you're living at the moment, and then we can forget about this whole pandemic. So we're starting we've walked into the time machine and you're walking out and you're literally a few days before starting your second six pupillage. So you've passed your bar course, you've obtained your pupillage, you've done your first six, and you're raring to go. You're now on your feet, which to me it sounds like a really, really exciting time, but also a really pressurized time, with obviously your the second six being a key part of you obtaining tenancy. So there's actually 4 taxes that are relevant to you as a self-employed barrister. So you're deemed to start your self-employment when you studied from the beginning of your second 6 pupillage. The first 6 pupillage is deemed to be a training period effectively. All of the information I'm about to impart now is relevant to barristers that will complete their pupillage within a set of chambers. If you're looking to do work in the employed bar, whether it's for the CPS, then you'll just be taxed normally as an employee. So this part of the presentation won't be as relevant to anyone that's looking to complete a pupillage at a set of chambers. So there are 4 taxes that are relevant to you as self-employed barrister. £50 per year, and you pay that once a year when you pay your tax each January. That tax gives you an entitlement to a state pension, maternity allowance. Hopefully you won't need any other benefits. The second tax is VAT. It's a really complicated tax, but to give you just a brief overview of the main points. Registration, it's voluntary or compulsory. It's compulsory if your fees received, your income, exceeds £85,000 in any rolling 12-month period. So you have to register prior to going over that threshold. Some chambers require their pupil barristers to register for that from the beginning of their second 6 pupillage. Others leave it until you become a tenant, and other chambers leave it entirely in your own hands. So you just need to make sure you do register prior to going over that threshold. Unfortunately, I had one of my, a barrister that came to me, not at the beginning of their pupillage, but they came to me, I think, halfway through their sort of second year. And they've been really successful. They've had a brilliant start to their barrister career. They've been billing lots, receiving lots of money, and they totally missed the whole point about registering for VAT. And it was a hugely financially punitive mistake to make. They were actually charged the VAT. They had to pay over to HMRC VAT that they didn't charge to their clients. So they lost 20% of their income from the point they went over the threshold. So it was just really upsetting, obviously, for the barrister and for me to see that as well. So you have to make sure you register prior to going over that threshold. Alternatively, you can register voluntary at any point in time, and at Silver Levene we register all our pupil barristers or barristers for VAT for free. Once you are VAT registered, your clerks will charge 20% VAT on top of your fees, and you are required by law to complete and submit a quarterly VAT return form. By the time most of you are starting your second 6 pupillage, making tax digital for VAT, which was brought in from HMRC in April 2019, will probably apply to all of you once you become VAT registered. And what that means is you are legally obliged to maintain digital accounting records, and you have to submit your VAT return from your digital software, and that software has to be compatible with HMRC systems, and you file your VAT return through directly from that software to HMRC. There are a number of different digital softwares on the market that you can use to do that. For our clients, we happen to use a software called Xero. The way it works, it's you can actually set up a direct bank feed from your business bank account into the software, so it picks up all your business transactions on a live daily basis. You can link in your billing system from chambers into that software as well, so it brings in all the information on a live daily basis, so it gives you much easier to see how your business is performing on a live basis. The actual VAT return itself will detail the VAT you've collected on behalf of the government when you've received payment of your case that had VAT charged on it, and then you have to deduct from that the VAT that you've incurred on your business expenses during that same quarterly period. So you offset the VAT you've incurred against the VAT you've collected, and you pay the net difference over to HMRC. Those VAT returns need to be filed on time and correctly, otherwise you are hit with various fines, penalties and surcharges, and you are open to a VAT inquiry from HMRC at any point in time. So you do need to make sure that your records are complying with the Making Tax Digital for VAT legislation. Key point is you can actually go back 4 years prior to the date of VAT registration and claim back VAT on any assets that you've purchased for your business. So if you've bought a laptop, an iPad, a desktop, home office desk or chair prior to starting pupillage, and then you're using that asset when you first start your second six, and you're still using that asset when you VAT register, and it's within that 4-year window, you can reclaim that VAT that you've incurred on those purchases. So I definitely recommend keeping any receipts for any of those items that I've mentioned that you purchased prior to pupillage. That is VAT in a nutshell, really. The third and fourth taxes are income tax and class 4 national insurance. They are 2 separate taxes. They're both based on the levels of your profits from your self-employed barrister trade. They're calculated separately but paid together. The only times during the year that you pay these 2 taxes are on the 31st of January and the 31st of July each year. And I'll come back to explain how those tax payments work a bit later on. Each year you're required by law to complete and submit a tax return form, and that tax return form usually runs from the 6th of April to the 5th of April each year, and it has to be filed by the subsequent 31st of January. If it's literally 1 second late, HMRC will hit you with £100 penalty, which is obviously an absolute waste of money, and those penalties do increase significantly over time if you still file if you still haven't filed your tax return form. I wouldn't recommend any of my clients to file their VAT or their tax return forms late. It does put your head above the parapet for a potential inquiry if you don't deal with your tax affairs on a timely basis. The tax return form itself will capture your details of your income and expenses from your self-employed barrister trade. If you have any other sources of taxable income, for example, you may own a property and have rental income, you may own a few shares, have some dividend income, a bit of bank interest, that is all captured on your tax return form. And also if you make charitable donations via gift aid or pension contributions, you do receive tax relief. So that also gets captured on your tax return form. Once that form has been submitted, and we submit that electronically online on behalf of our clients, you will have access to your own personal tax account on the HMRC system. So you'll see that your tax return has been filed and hopefully you've paid the tax that you owe. So it should, on the statement of account, show that should come back to 0. The system is based on self-assessment. You are effectively advising HMRC what your income, expenses, profit, tax liability is. The system would be fairly open to abuse if they didn't inquire into taxpayers' returns on a random or deliberate basis. And it is highly likely that during the course of your career, you could potentially face 1 inquiry. Each year, we prepare formal barrister income and expenditure accounts, and the figures from those accounts slot directly into the self-employed pages of the tax return form. The way in which those income and expenditure accounts can be prepared, there's actually 2 methods. There is what is called the cash basis and the earnings basis. The cash basis is that your income is only recognised for tax when you've received payment of your case. So that's good. The alternative basis is called the earnings basis, and the point at which your income is recognised for tax is accelerated to the point where there's a value to your work, even if it hasn't been billed. The good news is most of my pupil clients can avail themselves of the cash basis initially, because you can join the cash basis as long as you're fees received, including your taxable element of your pupillage award, is less than £150,000 in your first year, which for most of my barrister clients, that is the case. I do have some a few really successful barristers that in their first year do exceed that. So they end up unfortunately being on the earnings basis for the first, going forward from the first year. So assuming that most of your accounts would be prepared on the cash basis initially, your income would include any cases you've actually received payment for, and it would also include the taxable element of your pupillage award. So all chambers structure their pupillage awards that they offer pupils differently, and they're all at different levels as well. The general rules are any award that you receive in your first 6 is deemed not to be taxable. Any award that you receive in your second 6 is taxable income. Sometimes pupils don't receive an award in their second 6. They actually receive what is called guaranteed earnings. So any guaranteed earnings that you get to keep in your second 6 that tops up your income would also be taxable income as well. Previously in the presentation, I mentioned that you can take a drawdown, an advance of a pupillage award prior to starting pupillage. So depending on how your actual chamber's pupillage award is structured will dictate how much of that advance of that pupillage award is taxable. And to give you an example, if your total pupillage award was £40,000 for 12 months, and that was split equally £20,000 in the first 6, and £20,000 in the second 6, half of that pupillage award, the £20,000 you receive in the second 6 is taxable. If you had that same pupillage award, but you were able to take £10,000 as an advance on that pupillage award prior to pupillage, and the remaining balance, the £30,000, was still split equally over 12 months of your pupillage, then effectively you're receiving half of your that £10,000. Half of that relates to an amount that you would have originally received during your second 6. So £5,000 of that advance would be taxable. You may receive other income if you do any work for any other barristers. That would also be taxable income as well. In terms of your business expenses, for you to claim an expense as a business expense, it has to fall within the definition of one that is wholly business. So unfortunately, that would just any entertaining costs are disallowable. So if you've had to take out a solicitor for a drink or lunch to try and generate work for your business, that cost would be disallowable. Also note the term doesn't include the word necessarily. So if you decided to take a taxi from chambers to court every day when in reality you could have walked, it's not for the revenue to disallow that cost because you could have walked. It might not have been the most healthiest option, but you can claim for those costs. For you to claim an expense as a business expense, it also needs to be recorded and backed up by a receipt, which is what the digital software will do for you. What I'm going to do is run through all the various business expenses you can claim to offset against your income. So the main one invariably will be your chamber's contribution, clerk's fees, chamber's rent, however they structure that at your set. Travel, historically, before we went into lockdown, was quite a large cost for my barrister clients. So a lot of my clients aren't actually traveling anywhere at the moment, so their travel costs are quite low. But in the normal, hopefully when things return to normal and you are traveling to courts, then travel from your main base of operations to another place of work is allowable travel. If your chambers is your main base of operations, then you can't claim for your travel from your home to chambers. But at the moment, most of my clients, their offices have become their main base of operations. So if they travel home to another place of work, that would be an allowable expense. Transport, trains, taxis, buses, and you can also claim if you have to stay away for work, hotel costs and subsistence, occasional snacks if you're working unsociable hours. There will also, many of you may use a motor vehicle for business travel. The revenue expect you to keep a mileage log of the various business miles you travelled in the vehicle to arrive at a business use percentage, and then you need to keep a record of all the overhead running costs of the vehicle, so petrol, parking, repairs and maintenance, insurance, all those sorts of costs. You can also claim for all of your office administration costs. So that would include the business use of your mobile phone, because you'll use that for work. You can also claim for the business use of your home broadband internet connection. And it's really a gut feel. You'll get a feel for how much you're using it for work. I had a client, I was discussing his figures with him, and he was claiming 100% of the cost of his home broadband for work. And I sort of queried that to say, isn't there any sort of personal use to your home internet? And he said no, he does all of his personal surfing on the internet at Chambers and only uses his home internet for work, so he wants to claim 100% business use. There'll be any computer running expenses, also if you buy any actual computers, all of that you can deduct 100% in the year that you incur those costs. Any printing, postage, stationery costs. There'll be all of your professional expenses, so your indemnity insurance, any subscriptions to any professional associations, bar council, data protection, any research books, journals, newspapers, court attire. So if you've had to buy a wedding gown, that's an allowable expense, as are collars, cuffs and bands. There'll be any training and CPD course costs incurred subsequent to the commencement of your second SIX. Any bank charges, bank interest incurred on any accounts that you use for business. Accountancy fees, which is an expense dear to my heart, that is also a deductible expense as well. And there'll be sundry expenses. You might buy a wheelie bag for files, folders, or a home office desk lamp, those sorts of costs as well. So to recap, you'll have your income, less all of your various business expenses, should hopefully give a profit. Otherwise, if it doesn't, you might want to think of another career to pursue. So we've got your profit. The first £12,500 of that profit is your tax-free personal allowance. The next £35,000 worth of profit is taxed at 20%, and anything above that from 50,000 to 150,000 profit is taxed at 40%, and anything above that is taxed at 45%. Once your profits are over £100,000, you start losing your tax-free personal allowance. So by the time you get to 125,000, you don't have any tax-free personal allowance at all. So it's just a really painful level of profit to be taxed on. On top of that, you'll pay your Class 4 national insurance contributions, which are 9% on profits from 8,600 to 50,000, and anything above that is taxed at 2%. And then on top of that, if you have any outstanding university student loans or postgraduate loans, then depending on your levels of profit, you pay 9% on Plan 1 loans, which is profits greater than 19,000. And if it's a Plan 2 loan, you start repaying 9% once your profits are over 26,000 round figures. If there's one thing you take away from the meeting today, it's you need to be putting aside 20% of your fees received and your second SIX pupillage award for tax. So you've got to put money aside for tax as you earn it. Doesn't matter how successful a barrister you are, if you don't put money aside for tax, then that's when I see my clients becoming really unstuck. From my perspective, I think I'm going to wrap up now because there's some questions that you may have. So I just want to not miss out on if there are any questions that you have. So I've sort of covered the 4 taxes, and then you just need to be aware that the first time you ever pay tax, you pay 150% of the liability, because you pay for the first year and then on account for the next tax year. But as long as you're putting money aside for tax, you should have enough to put aside. Matt, have you got some questions for me?
I do. Thank you very much to Mason Bloom from Silver Levene. Tax is a very scary topic, I think, for a lot of people, and it's always so digestible when you present it at this fair. So I hope that those out watching really appreciate that. So we do have a question. This is quite a long one, but this is quite an interesting one. Good morning, Mason. I am planning to undertake the bar course in September 2021 on a part-time basis. I have applied for an IN scholarship this year and know that I can apply again in the second year of my bar studies if I'm not successful this time. If I were to be awarded an IN scholarship in my second year rather than my first, would the costs I incurred after my first year, mainly the cost of the course, be considered when deciding on how much money I should receive, or would the IN only look to award a scholarship based on my costs for the year I apply?
And to answer that question fairly briefly, in all honesty, I'm not that much of an expert on how YINs actually make their assessments for those applications. I'm sure if you actually contacted the YIN directly, they'd be only too happy to sort of answer that question. But from my perspective, I've got an idea of sort of the different types of funding out there, but not the general specifics on what's covered from an application process. So I do apologise, I can't answer that probably as well as you might have expected, but I'll definitely contact the IN on that point.
Thank you, Mason. And if you do need to get in contact with an IN of court, if you look on Target Jobs Law, we do keep a listing of the education and training offices, usually the offices that deal with scholarships. They usually have an email address, or they have a website. You can contact them through a form there. So please do contact them that way. So the next question we have is, are IN scholarships taxable?
No, they're not.
Okay, there we go.
Yeah, they're not taxable. It depends. Obviously, these scholarships are all for we're talking about effectively your bar courses, because there are other scholarships once you become a barrister that relate to other things, and some bar courses, no, they're not taxable at all.
That's perfect. Thank you. I do have one that I just wanted to add to this list, just because as you were going through sort of talking about, you need to file a tax return and you need to fill in a lot of forms with HMRC. Is this something that a chartered accountant would do for a barrister if they'd chosen to hire them for their services?
Yeah, effectively, what we do, I'm not sure sort of necessarily every other accountancy firm, but we would always register our clients for self-assessment, for VAT, and we also set up the digital accounting software system for them, and to get them on the right track from day one effectively. But in my mind, any accountant should register you for self-assessment and VAT when that's necessary.
That's brilliant. Thank you. I just think because speaking as someone who has seen a HMRC tax return form, sometimes thinking that you have help with that is quite a nice thing to know.
Yeah, we would all, yeah, we complete that for that.
I think we're going to have to, because it's 11:49 and we're due to finish soon.
Matt, I've got one point just to put it out there. Silver Levene, we do offer a first year free for all new pupil barristers. So we will do your first set of accounts and your first tax return at no cost. So it gives you an opportunity to get to know us, get a feel for our high level of service and our personal led approach for all of our clients. And we do offer an initial no cost, no obligation meeting if you do want to take that forward. I'm around for the rest of the day, virtually at the fair. So if you have got any questions, I'm happy to have one-to-ones all day for the rest of the day effectively. Thank you for your time and patience, and I wish you all the very best of luck for your future studies and hopefully your aspirations to become a barrister as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mason, for your time. And I just want to say to any of you, as Mason's just said, you can find him on Silver Levene's stand at the virtual fair. If you wouldn't mind, just pop your thank yous in the chat box afterwards, so we can see it when we go to click on the talks program a little bit later. Thank you very much, Mason, for giving up your time to talk to us about financing. And thank you very much to everyone who's attended. I hope you have a really useful virtual pupillage fair. See you in the next one.
Bye-bye. Thank you, Matt.